Guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. What I'm going to be talking about today is the first new moon of 2025. This is coming up here on Wednesday, January 29th. The new moon peaks at 4:35 a.m. Pacific time, and this takes place in the sign of Aquarius. Now, any new moon is a time to manifest new beginnings and growth that are related to the sign that the moon is transiting through, but this one's a little extra powerful. Because it's the first new moon of 2025, but also because, we're going into this age of Aquarius. This is a really good time to be getting familiar with this very dynamic Aquarius energy. Not only that, but we just had Pluto enter into the sign of Aquarius, which will be there for the next 20 years. So a lot of really important transformational energy is coming through this sign of Aquarius. Now, what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down the sign of Aquarius for you in pretty good detail, because again, this is a time to be manifesting the growth you want to experience. It's related to this sign of Aquarius. I will also be pulling up the chart and showing you the overall astrological forces we are receiving around the time of this new moon. And I will also be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Aquarius. And this is an important one because really anytime anything up in the sky transits through the sign of Aquarius, these parts of our body, for some people, they might actually very much feel it. And for some people, it's totally subconscious. But depending on what celestial body it is, that's transiting through the sign of Aquarius, these parts of our body become activated. Okay. And with that said, like I said, Pluto, which can be kind of toxic, okay, Pluto can be very disruptive, is now going to this sign of Aquarius for the next 20 years. So it's a good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our body, especially when it's Aquarius season, meaning anytime the sun goes through the sign of Aquarius, which is basically the end of January going into the first few weeks of February. So of course, I'll be mentioning some remedies to help support these parts of our body. And I will also be talking about gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Aquarius. Something I've been doing for the last 9 years now is I pull out my journal. Every single new moon, write down the growth I want to experience that's related to that zodiac sign. And I like to apply it to the area of my own life that it's activating. Okay. So it's got to be coming through somewhere in your natal chart. If you've had a reading with me, you can go back to review the video recording to see which house in your own natal chart the sign of Aquarius comes through. So I incorporate that into my journal entry. And then I like to take a few gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through, put them on top of my journal. As always, you can find a full extensive list of stones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through in the description below. If you don't have any gemstones at all, that's perfectly okay. Please do not feel discouraged. In fact, a new moon is an incredible time to be manifesting more gemstones into your life. I'm not kidding you. I think that's why I have such an abundance of gemstones, is because I'm always writing that down in my journal. Okay, so let's get into this. The sign of Aquarius is what we call the fixed air sign. When I say fixed, I'm talking about, it's like basically an ability to get into a fixed rhythm. Okay, the fixed signs always come in the middle of a season. Okay, it's like holding the energy still. Now, in the element of air is very strongly associated with intellect. Okay, all the air signs are associated with some way of intellectually perceiving things. A lot of times they can be more sociable than the other signs. Okay, now in traditional astrology, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, which when we understand the mathematics of the zodiac, that totally makes sense to me. Not only that, but Saturn is, like in medical astrology, really in any system of astrology, Saturn is cold. Okay, kind of like a cold and detached influence. And the sign of Aquarius, a lot of times if you just look up keywords to describe the sign of Aquarius, you'll find cold and detached. There's a reason for that other than Saturn being one of its rulers. And I will get into that. But it's also in modern astrology ruled by Uranus, which I completely understand that, because Uranus influences things like revolutionary changes and technological changes. Uranus is out with the old way of doing things. I got a new idea on how to do things. That's very Aquarius energy. Okay, now also this sign of Aquarius, the motto for it is I know. Again, it's like a hyper intellectual energy. That certainly doesn't mean everybody out there who's an Aquarius is going to be super intellectual, but they, generally speaking, if you've got Sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, even Moon in Aquarius, Aquarius rising, these are people who come up with I just know that. It's a very electrical energy. It's very intuitive, and it's not intuitive. Like the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces are generally the signs that are associated with intuition and psychic capabilities. Aquarius is too, but in a totally different way. It's not the water signs, they feel everything, but Aquarius picks up the signals, like the electrical signals. Once you see, when I pull up the chart, you can see the glyph for the sign of Aquarius. It's like radio waves. And I always picture the sign of Aquarius like walking around with these unseen antennas, picking up all the little signals through the ether. Okay, that's very Aquarius energy. Now it's represented by the water bearer. Again, this is not a water sign. It's an air sign. Water in Western astrology is directly associated with emotions and feelings. Okay, but what the water bearer does, it's like, if you can envision this, the water bearer is holding the water. It detaches the emotions from the water, turns the water into pure information. So going back to that cold and detached, like detaching from the emotions and turning the water into information and then pouring the water out for all of humanity. Okay, this is going into this age of Aquarius. This is why we're getting flooded with information, especially through the form of technology. Okay, now also the sign of Aquarius, it's like the humanitarian, pouring out that information for all of humanity. It's very group oriented, but at the same time, it's about individualism. It's kind of like a rebellious energy. In fact, you could even, again, that doesn't mean everybody who's an Aquarius is going to be rebellious, but just the sign of Aquarius in and of itself, it's like one to rebel against authority. And when we think about, I mean, what we've seen go on, especially since 2020, you know, groups of people, humanity coming together to form, you know, protests and that sort of thing. And it could be when I say individualism, it could like be the punk rock kid with the super conservative dude with his little suit and tie, and then like an elderly lady and whatever it is, like a group of very, very different, unique people from each other, but coming together to make a plan. Okay, that's again kind of like rebelling against authority, which is also a very Uranus influence. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways? Again, it's a very sociable energy as well. It's one of the greatest qualities about the sign of Aquarius is friendliness. It's all about groups of friends. I have two Aquarius siblings, and it just cracks me up because they both, one of them works for like a corporate position, but her job is to gather, it's like she's the team leader. Like it's all about teams for her. And she loves her teams, that sort of thing. And then the other sibling who basically just gathers the community together and puts on these big events for artists and local craftspeople, that sort of thing. Very, very team oriented kind of energy here. Is maybe that's something you want to, you know, grow in that way. Maybe you want to develop more of a network of people. Or maybe you want to step into your own individualism. You'll notice a lot of Aquarius risings will have this very unique way of presenting themselves, dyeing their hair some crazy color or whatever it is. It's very, you know, going against the status quo kind of energy. Maybe you want to get a little more familiar with technology. Another thing is talk about AI, all this wild, crazy stuff. You know, personally, I don't, as of where I stand right now, I don't really want to get comfortable using AI. I just don't have an interest in it. There's some things that are a little concerning about it to me, especially with Pluto going through Aquarius. But it's also a time where I think it's really important, and it feels impossible sometimes to keep up with all the updates. Everything's always updating, changing this, changing that. But that's super Aquarius energy. And honestly, it's like if you're not able to keep up with that stuff, you might find yourself kind of struggling as we move forward into this age of Aquarius. How do you want to grow in these ways that are related to this sign of Aquarius? It's such a dynamic energy. And they could go. Another thing to consider here is maybe being able to detach from emotional situations. We've got Saturn going through Pisces. That's can be very emotional. It's like triggering to emotional stuff. And Mars going through Cancer, which is another water sign. Both the malefics, Saturn and Mars, they can be aggressive energies in their own strange way, hitting emotions. So with that said, especially if they're hitting something in your natal chart, being able to detach from emotional situations to kind of understand it the situation from a higher level of truth, understanding it from an intellectual perspective. Like, where's the lesson I need to learn from this? And honestly, astrology is one of the greatest ways to go about that. That's one of my favorite things about astrology is, going through something that's super emotional in my life and that sort of thing, and being able, or other people's lives, and being able to pull out the charts and go, okay, well, here's the lesson that Saturn's trying to teach us in this situation. That's very Aquarius energy. Okay, so be thinking about that. And I do recommend writing these things down in your journal. Let's go ahead and pull up the chart here. So what we're looking at here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, this is basically a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Again, this is Wednesday, January 29th at 4:35 a.m. Pacific time with geocentric. That means we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. These things right here are the symbols for all the planets, celestial bodies, wandering stars, whatever you want to call them, zodiacal points. And when we go in the wheel a little ways, these things are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all those things will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. So let's start here. Here's the sun and the moon. This is what happens every single time we have a new moon. The sun and the moon come together and they're in the exact same spot. Okay, what happens is, it's like, here's the moon. The moon goes much, much faster around this thing. So 6 months from now, the moon will have passed up the sun 6 times to come back over and make a full moon in the sign of Aquarius. That's probably hard to follow along if you don't know what I'm talking about. But basically, over these 6 months, that's how we're experiencing the growth of this Aquarius energy. Okay, now, and it's like as I've said so many times before, it's like in Western astrology, and there's other systems of astrology that completely make sense to me as well, where the sun can be considered a little bit of a feminine energy with a masculine chariot. There's all kinds of ways to describe this, but in traditional Western astrology, the moon is the mother, the sun is the father, and they're coming together for this new moon to create this new energetic force, this energetic baby that grows over the next 6 months. Okay, now, and not only that, but if again, you want to apply this to your own natal chart, you're going to want to pull that up and look to see all these things that look like a slice of pie. Those are the houses. Okay, you're going to want to see which house in your natal chart this symbol right here, the glyph for the sign of Aquarius, comes through, because that's the area of your life that this new moon is coming through or activating. Okay, now, one of the most important things about this new moon is this right here is Pluto and this right here is Mercury. My mouse too quickly. This is Pluto. This is Mercury. So, oh boy, about 8 days before this new moon, the sun transits over Pluto and Mercury and is beaming that energy at us. But just the hours leading up to this new moon, I mean, it's kind of even like going up to the 28th of January. Some of this would depend on your time zone, but the day before, we start to feel into the moon transiting over Pluto. When the moon transits over another celestial body, she distributes the energy of that particular celestial body. So she distributes Pluto's energy, and then also over Mercury. Okay, Mercury and Pluto are currently very close together. This is kind of a gnarly transit because Pluto rules over our psyche, and Pluto's the ruler of the underworld. Pluto can be a brutal energy. Overall, Pluto is often described as the planet of power because Pluto can be very empowering, but sometimes we have to go through some kind of a real hardship in order to have the rebirth, okay? Pluto influences a death and rebirth process and has a huge influence on the shadow parts of us, okay? And then there's Mercury, which in short rules over our mental function, okay? Mercury's like the nerves, the intake of the information going through the nervous system, being stored away, and then we want to communicate that information. Mercury's bringing that information back out, okay? And so with Pluto, gnarly Pluto right next to Mercury, the nervous system is going, whoa, especially in this very electrical sign of Aquarius. And the moon, as she's approaching this new moon, is distributing those things onto all of us. Look to see if you've got anything in the early degrees of the sign of Aquarius. If you do, you very well could be going through a very, very almost like psychosis transformational process. Okay, now let's start with Saturn over here. Here's Saturn going through Pisces, which basically Saturn's going to be going through Pisces until February of 2026, but we'll peek into Aries a little later on this year, but then retrograde back into Pisces. Okay, so Saturn, one of like the lords of this new moon, because again, Saturn is one of Aquarius's rulers. Saturn is rigid and cold and restrictive and strict. And Saturn, he's like the ruler of our tit for tat karma. Saturn is the one that makes us learn the really hard lessons that just can feel like you're being isolated from the world. And going through that sign of Pisces, I really do feel like, as I've said so many times before, with Saturn going through Pisces, especially if you got something in your natal chart near 17 degrees Pisces, it's like the lessons can come through some kind of a spiritual study or spiritual practice, esoteric studies, anything like that. There's so much going on in the skies that would influence a good time to be like researching things of an esoteric or metaphysical nature. Specifically, Saturn going to Pisces, it's like, okay, yeah, you might be going through some hard stuff, but let's learn some spiritual practices, no matter what it is. If it's, if you're, going into some sort of a system of religion or just some kind of faith, okay, that actually you might learn some lessons there. Okay, now we've also got Venus going through Pisces. Yay, we love Venus and Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces. This is their favorite sign to be in because Pisces is like the sign of oneness, okay? And Venus is the influencer of love. In fact, she might even be softening Saturn up a little bit. So that's really nice. If you've got anything, I'm going to say between 20 and, really even go down to 15 degrees Pisces, all the way up to 29 degrees and 59 minutes Pisces. But specifically between 20 and 29 degrees Pisces, it's like you've got Venus, the planet of love, and Neptune, which is often described as the higher octave of Venus. Neptune's like flowy, mystical, diffusive energy, very, very spiritual energy, and the North Node pumping energy in, all together conjoined here in the sign of Pisces. In fact, all these things are basically sitting right on top of my sun, and I'll tell you what, I'm feeling it. It's a very dreamy energy. The beauty of it is it's hyper intuitive, but it can make things like confusing. Things can be like, I can't focus. It's a foggy energy, but it's also a very lovely energy. Okay, now let's talk about Uranus, the other lord of this new moon. So here's Uranus in retrograde. And in fact, I believe Uranus goes stationary the day after this new moon. So Uranus is really strong at the time of this new moon. Oh my gosh. So Uranus, again, revolutionary, strange, spasmodic energy. Look to see in your chart if you got anything near 23 degrees Taurus. If you do, there's probably something almost zappy. Be extra careful around like devices, anything that's going to mess with your electromagnetic field, your toroidal field. But in the sign of Taurus, we are seeing incredible changes going on here. I just saw something. Today's the 23rd of January. I just saw something where they are like releasing the documents of JFK's assassination. I kind of feel like they're probably going to like redact or black out a huge portion of it. I could be wrong. But all these like very strange changes going on with Uranus coming to the end of this retrograde in the sign of Taurus is variable, could have to do with money and finances as well. Okay, now, but especially again, if you've got something near 23 degrees Taurus in your natal chart, there's probably a lot of activity going on. Okay, let's jump on up here to Mars. So Mars is also in retrograde. Okay, when anything's in retrograde, it's basically stronger, but not just stronger. It's like almost, it's like hard. It's like as I always describe it this way, like driving backwards. You don't drive as gracefully as you do driving forwards, at least most people anyway. So it's like this kind of aggressive nature. And the sign of Cancer is so sensitive. The motto is I feel. Okay, Mars is particularly aggressive. So if you picture Mars, aggression, frustrations, don't get me wrong, we need Mars. Otherwise, if we didn't have Mars, we wouldn't have muscles and we wouldn't take action in life. But so Mars, aggressive nature, hot, aggressive nature coming through this sign that's all about feelings and emotions and intuition and that sort of thing in retrograde. So if you got something near 21 degrees Cancer in your natal chart, you might be dealing with some emotional frustrations. Okay. And also be very, very careful about accidents. Mars has a big influence on things that like a burn or, you fall and injure yourself. That's a very, very Martian influence. And again, especially when he's in retrograde and he's, let's just say, debilitated in the sign of Cancer. Okay, now let's move on to, let's talk about Jupiter. I love this one. So Jupiter is also in retrograde, but Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter rules things or influences things that are of abundance and wisdom and philosophy and all kinds of wonderful things. It's like Jupiter's kind of like the professor. So Jupiter's all about wisdom and expanding the consciousness. Gemini here, that's where Jupiter is going through Gemini until June. And Gemini is the student. Gemini is the one that pays attention to all the little facts, okay? So we've got the professor in the student's house, but going in retrograde, okay? So this, I'm seeing this as this adds to a good time to be studying things. I don't know about you guys, but it's like I'm becoming a super passionate student all over again. Of course, I always have been, but it's almost like I'm so intrigued with new information coming out. And this is a really good time to be doing that. Also, it could potentially be something that needs to be reevaluated with your studies, that sort of thing, because of that retrograde. Again, especially if you've got anything near 11 degrees Gemini in your natal chart. Okay, so let's talk about Chiron here. Now, this is something else interesting. We have so much water and so much air coming through here. These are all air signs here. This is all air coming through the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign. Jupiter, Gemini, going through Gemini. Gemini is an air sign. Then we've got all this water, Pisces, water sign. And we've got Mars up here going through this water sign. The only things that we have in Earth, the only thing we have in Earth is this right here, which is Uranus, which is not an earthly energy at all. Uranus is spazzy, disrupts electromagnetic fields, okay? But Taurus is a very stable earth sign. So it's a kind of a strange blend of energies there. And then Chiron here coming through the sign of Aries, that's the only thing we have in fire. So this is like all water and air. Okay, this is emotions and intellect. Again, a lot of people might be going through super emotional stuff, but it's so, especially if we set the intentions to learn from the experience, okay? It could be a fantastic time for an astrology reading if you're going through something emotional, because the astrology behind it kind of show you the intellectual process of getting through it and understanding things from that higher level of truth. But overall, as I've said so many times before, and not only that, but Chiron's no longer in retrograde. Chiron is the wounded healer, wants us to heal from our deep buried subconscious wounds from childhood. And Aries is the warrior, the sign of self. Okay, so we've got Chiron, especially if you got anything near 19 degrees Aries, and that's an important degree because that's where he had that total solar eclipse last year, coming through saying, let's heal this stuff. Let's heal this stuff. Okay, so there's that. Lastly, let's point out the South Node here. I'm going through the sign of Virgo. So South Node would be going through Virgo, North Node would be going through Pisces all the way until it's either June or July of 2026, summer of 2026. The South Node is kind of like the drain points. It takes energy away, it drains things away. It's kind of a weak point. And it's like that sign of Virgo. It's the sign of rules our intestines. It's a sign and our liver, and has an influence on the sympathetic nervous system, like important parts of our body that keep us healthy. So we've got the drain point going through there. It could be a good time, especially if you've got anything near 28 degrees Virgo in your chart. It could be a good time to detoxify the liver or the intestines. For the intestines, I really like, as I've mentioned so many times before, RUG, rug, remove unwanted guests. And then for the liver, even something as simple as milk thistle could be great. But overall, if you've got anything near 28 degrees Virgo, whatever it is, let's say it's you've got Mercury near 28 degrees Virgo, then your mental function may not be so optimal at this time. Okay, or if it's Mars, you got Mars near 28 degrees Virgo, your physical drive may not be so optimal at this time. Okay, so I think I will leave that there. Now, next, let's talk about body parts. Okay, so the sign of Aquarius does rule the calves and the ankles, okay? A lot of people who have, especially if they got a sun in Aquarius and it's harshly aspected, they can have issues with the ankles, sprained ankles, broken ankles, whatever it is, that sort of thing. But it also, the sign of Aquarius really kind of has a massive influence on the circulation in the body. Okay. Like a lot of times people with Aquarius energy, again, certainly not all of them. If you've got a beautifully aspected sun in Aquarius, then this may not be the case for you. But a lot of people who are born into the sign of Aquarius and their sun's aspecting Saturn or something like that, there could be stagnation of the blood getting stuck down in the, like towards the feet, like right at the bottom part of the legs. A lot of times some people born into the sign of Aquarius will have beautiful ankles. Some of them, they're swollen ankles because there's stagnation going on down there. Okay, so let's talk about this. First of all, when it comes to like getting the circulation going from the bottom part of the legs. In fact, a lot of women who are born with like kind of something going on with their natal chart in the sign of Aquarius, they'll end up with like cellulite in certain areas of their body due to there's a poor circulation going on. And I'm not by any means suggesting that rosemary is necessarily going to completely cure any cellulite, but it does help to get, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not offering any kind of medical advice, I have to say that, but rosemary can help get the circulation going from the bottom part of the body up in through the rest of the bloodstream. And not only that, but it smells so good. And it's actually, I think it's considered like a neurotropic or something like that. Like even just smelling it, you can feel the stimulation within yourself. I love rosemary tea. I love just making, so I've got a rosemary plant where I just go and harvest them from. And they're actually a funny story. I feel like I should tell it. One time I did that. I just picked some fresh rosemary, brought it inside, and literally just made tea with it right away. Like basically just put the rosemary in, like poured hot water on the rosemary and let it sit there. And to me, this is like devastating because I can't even kill an ant. The only things that I can actually kill willingly is a tick that I had to pull out of my dog because he's hurt my dog. So yeah, I will definitely kill a tick. Or mosquitoes on a camping trip, no problem killing them. And there was another one, ticks and fleas. Those are the only things that, even an ant, I don't want to kill an ant. I don't like to do that. It hurts me inside. So this story was devastating to me. I go to drink my tea and all of a sudden I see there was a caterpillar that was on the rosemary and it went into my tea and I was just the saddest thing ever. And the only reason I'm telling that story is because it's kind of funny, but it was also, like I said, it was tragic to my heart. But that's how much I love rosemary. I'll just go out and pick it and make tea out of the fresh rosemary. Most people, I can't say most people, a lot of people, they'd be way too strong for them. A lot of people don't even like rosemary in their food because they say it's too strong. Personally, I love it and I know it's really good. It can even like I said, like stimulate all the nerves to make you function better, think clearer, that sort of thing. So I love rosemary, not only that, but it grows so easily in most places. And not only that, once it's dry, like these are pretty freshly harvested. Once it's dry, I just chop it up and put it in a little jar. So I just have dried rosemary as well. Okay, next up, what was I going to mention next? Let's talk about nettles. So this right here is a nettles tincture. Unfortunately, all the nettles outside it's middle of winter, so I don't have any fresh nettles outside, but I do have a nettles tincture. I've talked about, I don't want to go into details about how to make tinctures because you can easily do that for yourself, but it's very easy to do. Some tinctures might be a little bit more, just more details, but it's basically you harvest the fresh herb and you put it in some kind of alcohol and it let it sit for at least 2 weeks and it pulls the medicine out. Now, why nettles? Which nettles also are very common. They're basically like a weed, or at least around here anyway. They're got to be really careful harvesting nettles because they hurt, but there's so many benefits of nettles. In fact, some people have even who have arthritis can apply the stinging nettles to their arthritis, and the sting might hurt, but it actually has helped their arthritis. But overall, nettles for the sign of Aquarius, because nettles are grounding. They are so packed with minerals. And I just take my alcohol tinctures, and as I've showed so many times before, I just put them in one of these little bottles, add a little bit of water to dilute it, and take those tinctures. And nettles can also be very calming to the nervous system. But overall, I'm applying it to the sign of Aquarius because there's so many minerals, and minerals ground the electrical energy. They ground out that kind of spazzy kind of energy. A lot of people born under the sign of Aquarius, again, not just the sun sign, but other things, moon in Aquarius, they will have these weird spazzy things go on in their body. And a lot of them are like hooked or addicted to using things like social media and computers and devices and that sort of thing. And I think it's just something that is within them. They're that electrical energy coming through. Okay, so there's that. The other one I wanted to mention here, this is almost gone. Bobby Toombs, if you are watching this, I think I'm gonna have to reach out to you soon, buddy, because this is almost gone. This is ginkgo biloba, which ginkgo can actually, you won't even be able to see it. It says right there, but it's just a tea. It's just a tea that brings oxygen to the blood. Going into this blood, I feel like I should bring this up. Talking about the sign of Aquarius is actually, this is straight out of this book, which was from 1933. This is from Howard Cornell, the Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology. Talks about, and I can't find this information anywhere other than this book, but I just there's some very fascinating things. It's like traditional, real medical astrology going back into Renaissance times, and talks about how the sign of Aquarius it's like directly associated with things like corrupt blood because of the stagnation going on. And I could go into so much detail. It's just so wild. Like the first time Pluto entered into the sign of Aquarius, as we're going into the age of Aquarius, there was a lot of people, putting things, I know I got to be careful about what I say here on YouTube, got injections that then led to things like blood clots, that sort of thing, all as this Aquarius energy was going on. And that's the sign of Aquarius. Again, it's like lower parts of the legs and the ankles and that sort of thing. But I don't think people realize that the sign of Aquarius actually has a big, it doesn't rule the blood. It's more like problems with the blood or impure blood. I think that's a quote from that book, is they use the word corrupt blood and they also use the word impure blood because of the stagnation that's going on with that sign of Aquarius. So really important time, again, with Pluto going through Aquarius for the next 20 years, to keep the blood flow clean. And that ginkgo biloba actually brings oxygen into the blood and helps it get up to the brain and all sorts of wonderful things like that. Another thing I'm going to mention here, this is getting in kind of some deep stuff here, but this is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this properly, Fullerenol, which is from David Wolf's website. I'll leave a link for it. And I actually like to do both. This one right here is C60, carbon 60, which, okay, this is basically to help clean out, all parts of the body, so many parts of the body, but mostly it's like, this is the water. It's able to deliver the carbon 60 like it's water soluble. And so the delivery system is like 10 times stronger than C60. C60 actually comes usually in like some kind of an olive oil. But these guys, if you were just going to get one, I would try the Fullerenol. If you read about it, again, I'll leave a link for it in the description below. This can help detoxify what's going on when we're being subjected to all these weird, electromagnetic fields, all the EMF, everybody, I live way deep in the forest and I'm still being subjected to it. I got a computer here, I got an iPad down there, I got a phone, in my car, or whatever. It's like we're constantly being subjected to these things. And this Fullerenol can be very beneficial to that. And not only that, but it's also pretty gentle as well. Again, I'll leave a link so you can read more about that on your own if you want. Okay, now gemstones. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Aquarius is amethyst. I thought I grabbed a couple pieces. I did. Amethyst. Most people know what amethyst looks like. What I love about amethyst, it's super, like it's a metaphysical, super pineal gland activating kind of gemstone, but it's also like puts you in touch with, it can help you foresee. It's also kind of an electrical kind of, just if you're super intuitive, you can feel into these things. I'll never forget the one time I went to a crystal shop, and that's a whole nother story. This lady, her eyes were closed. She knew it was amethyst just by the way she was feeling into it. And it took a long time, but I feel like I actually am tapped into that kind of intuition now. But anyway, another thing that I love about amethyst is that it's protective, maybe more so of an amplifier. It depends. If it's super dark, this is a little bit of a darker piece of amethyst here. The darker it is, the more protective it's going to be, as in like protecting you from the unseen force, the unwanted forces, that sort of thing. The lighter it is, the more amplifying it's going to be. So you write out your manifestations in your journal, and then you put a piece of amethyst on that. It's connecting with the energies, the cosmic forces, and it's amplifying what you are trying to manifest. Okay, so there's that. And I know that that sounds very woo-woo, and I know that that's super hyper metaphysical. But again, I wouldn't continue to do this stuff for 9 years now if I didn't see the results coming from it. Okay, another one I'm going to mention here is hematite. I actually got my hematite, that's why I wore these today, my hematite earrings. And this is a piece of hematite right here. Hematite also resonates beautifully with the sign of Aquarius and is also said to be protective against the electromagnetic fields. Another one here, this isn't necessarily totally directly a Aquarius gemstone right here, but shungite is also, it's like one that actually has been tested too. And there is some debate around it, but from what I'm seeing, these actually do help to protect us from, you know, these electrical energies, things that are messing with our own electrical body. Okay, I think that's all the ones I was going to mention here today. There's, again, there's a full extensive list of these gemstones below. Garnet resonates beautifully with the sign of Aquarius. Garnet is grounding. It can also, there's all kinds of wonderful stones we can be working with here. But again, please do not feel discouraged if you don't have any of these gemstones. And I think I'm going to end that there. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading so we can go deeper into this stuff in your own natal chart, you can schedule your reading through erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.